first-hand accounts. They portray the experiences of people who had no more reason to believe in ghosts than you. Is it possible that beyond our understanding, there exists a darker world? Hidden away in the desolate valleys of rural Wales is the Skirrid Inn. Situated on an old coaching road, for centuries the pub served lonely travellers. Although now a respectable public house, some believe it holds echoes of a sinister past.
Me and my wife decided we wanted to go and stay somewhere. And we thought, well, why don't we come to Skirrid? We like old buildings anyway. I was sat down and I just wanted to take a drink. And as I put my hand to my mouth, I felt this phenomenal pain in my stomach. And I started seeing visions, if you like, flashbacks. I was actually hanging. And I remember seeing my feet kicking back and forth. But it wasn't my body, yet it felt like me. I could see people's hands all red, full of blood. Bits were being pulled out of me. I was temporarily possessed. Perhaps it was a past life. Perhaps I was that spirit.
Simon Kerwood quickly came to believe he wasn't alone. Numerous staff and visitors to the pub had complained of similar experiences.
It was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was laying some cutlery. So I carried on laying up my knives and forks. It was almost like a lion's roar in my ear. It was terrifying. I don't like to generally go in there on my own anymore. Like, it's got to the point where even at night time the lights are on in there because I don't like to look in there in the dark.
So in the pub, sat downstairs by the main fireplace. We were all sat around laughing, joking, talking. But there was a very clear presence standing just behind my right shoulder. I felt very clearly that this was a woman, and I actually heard her say her name. The name that she said to me was very unnerved, very scared.
Women were now coming forward on a regular basis, with tales of a frightening female presence. That was said to strike without warning. As one guest reported when staying at the inn.
She was really distressed, absolutely hysterical. She'd left and she was still wet. Her hair was wet. But she did say, she's trying to hold me down. She's trying to hold me down.
We were quite concerned, and I wanted some answers. A couple walked in one summer's afternoon saying that they were trying to trace their family tree, and that had I heard of a Henry Price that was the landlord of the inn during the mid-18th century. I said that I hadn't, and they said that they had a death certificate of his wife. She was aged 32 and she died of consumption. Her name was Fanny.
Is it possible that the Skirrid Inn is haunted by the ghost of Fanny Price? Some believe that the former landlady wishes to scare staff and visitors away from her old pub. It's a belief that might find substance in the checkered history of the pub itself, which, behind closed doors, doubled as a courthouse. On this site, local villains would be tried, sentenced, all under Fanny's watchful eye.
Fanny Price. Why is she here? Why does she still haunt? My personal belief is that she was the main woman, the only woman capable of keeping an eye on all the goings-on in the Skirrid Inn.
Yeah, it is particularly frightening when you don't know where or when Fanny's going to appear next. But I suppose I come here to do my job and get along with it, and I suppose if she does make a guest appearance, then next time hopefully I'll be better prepared for it.
A mother will do anything to protect her children. But how do you shield an innocent child from something you can't explain?
The month was August of 1977. My mum had recently divorced. She had 4 children, but she was left to bring up on her own. Knocking seems to be going round the wall, but more so up one side of the wall where the stairs was. And it was continuous knocking. It was quite frightening. It's mixed emotions really, like this is disbelief, you know. You wanted to believe that something strange was going on, but in another sense you didn't. You didn't want to accept it because you've never come across anything like this before.
Over the next few weeks, the Hodgson family felt that an eerie chaos was descending on their home in Enfield, North London. The case was attracting unwanted attention, and an ever-growing band of visitors were now reporting bizarre activity that seemed to occur on a daily basis.
I didn't really expect, I certainly didn't expect to find anything like we did find when we got there.
Furniture would be turned over, fires started.
I remember, because it struck me just above my right eye, was a Lego brick. It gave me hell of a whack. I mean, I had a mark there for some days afterwards. It was just, it was frightening at the time, it really was.
There was a very strong atmosphere of despair to a certain extent.
When paranormal investigator Maurice Gross arrived on the scene, questions were being asked. What could explain the traumatic experiences affecting the family?
One of my jobs, of course, was to go there and try and explain to them, after I'd heard what type of phenomena were happening, that it was possibly poltergeist-type phenomena. It was obvious then. Janet seemed to be the centre.
As she came through the door, it was weird. Just things took off and started flying around the room.
It became the centre of me, I feel, as events went on. And a lot of things were surrounded around me.
Janet then started to go into trance situations.
She was just really sort of thrashing around in, I don't know what it was just literally a fit.
We were worried that she might kill herself. We felt, terrible about it. She rushed across the room and smashed her head on the wall.
I was feeling like I was possessed.
After yet another bad night, a heavily sedated Janet was put to bed.
We called the doctor, and he gave her a shot of something to calm her down. She was that sedated, as the doctor admitted that she'd had enough to put her horse out.
Suddenly there's an enormous explosion. We rushed up the stairs. Janet!
To find that, as sedated as she was in the corner of a room. This radio was up on top of like a chest of drawers, and she was asleep on top of it.
I felt like I wasn't in control of what was happening to me.
Over the next few weeks, Graham Morris took a number of images using a remote-controlled camera. The images appear to show an 11-year-old Janet and her sister thrown from their beds night after night. But worse, the activity in the house seemed to become more extreme.
In many later years to come, which when I see photographs was very distressing for me to know that I'd actually been in that state and not known about it.
Fueled by the fears of the family and a natural instinct for answers, Maurice Gross decided to attempt communication.
I believe you can talk. Say my name.
Let me hear you say my name again. Come on, let me hear you say my name.
I looked at John, I looked at Jan, I thought I was crazy. And I thought the voice came from the ceiling or somewhere, you see. When I looked at Janet carefully when it started to talk a little bit more, I noticed her lips were trembling very slightly. And I said to her, I challenged her, I said, Janet, that voice I think is coming from you.
It didn't feel like it was coming within me, it was more around me, behind me. As I felt, it was a rather strange feeling, but you felt like you were being used in some way.
Absolutely terrifying to hear a girl speak in an old man's gruff voice. He said, where are you in the room? And he said, on top of Janet.
I felt like I couldn't control the voice centering itself around me.
I don't quite remember who asked his name, but he did reply, my name's Bill. He was asked the question, how did you die?
I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in
Now, we didn't know that. Nobody else knew it.
Is it possible that the spirit of a dead man called Bill had taken control of Janet?
It was like a force that just pulled me out of bed. And I was so terrified because I didn't know where I was going to land.
At the time for a bakery that turned into the road. I looked up and saw a young girl in the room, and she seemed to be floating around in the room. I felt so strange that I had all goose pimples on my arms. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Then, in autumn 1978, to the relief of the family, the activity seemed to calm down for good, but only after Janet was sent to hospital for psychiatric tests.
And I just felt like an outcast of the family. Why me?
She received a full, clean bill of health. After the frightening events in Enfield ended, further research uncovered the death certificate of a man who had died in the Hodgson's house 14 years previously. His name was William Wilkins,
Died in a chair downstairs.
otherwise known as Bill.
He did reply, "My name's Bill." This case convinced me 100% that there is something beyond the physical realm that we normally understand.
We can talk about hauntings and poltergeists and all the rest of it till the cows come home, but I've no idea what it was, but it sure happened. That's certain.
And I still dream about it.
Deep in the bleak hills of Snowdonia sits Mays Artro Heritage Museum, a graveyard of decaying wartime relics, derelict bungalows and underground bunkers. This was once part of a busy airbase for Allied pilots during the Second World War. The rotting military paraphernalia is a unique insight into past lives. But for some, it has assumed a far more chilling resonance.
I'd driven down to see my girlfriend Lisa. And me and Lisa went to bed in the small bedroom in the bungalow. There's this guy sort of kneeling at the bottom of the bed. And he's got a scar down the side of his face. His eyes were really piercing. Sleep with the light on now.
Could the remains of Mays Artro Air Base harbour a dark secret? If so, one building seemed to hold the darkest secret of all.
It's a place of doom.
The feeling of being watched all the time.
Somewhere in the building, the floor is stained with blood. I worked here for 3 years, and I used to work in the restaurant, which is down the bottom of the site. Sometimes we'd help about on site, the odd jobs that I need doing, painting, anything, any maintenance work.
19-year-old Carowyn Roberts entered Mays Artro's derelict decontamination chamber out of misguided curiosity.
People have been in there, they've been sick, people have been pushed. They've always felt claustrophobic in there. I was in the middle of the building and we just looked down, there's a corridor bit. It was as if I wasn't meant to be in the building. It was trying to tell me to get out. I felt sick. More than anything, it was fear.
But Carowyn Roberts wasn't the only one to say he'd experienced a chilling encounter in the decontamination chamber.
I'm a designer and a photographer for a living. But obviously as a photographer you get to go to lots of different interesting places. So I was just having a general wander around. I felt like I was in a place I shouldn't be in. I basically ran out of the building. I was running. It was very definitely a military person. He was coming for me. If I wasn't to come out, something was going to happen to me.
Could the history of the airbase throw any light on the frightening stories surrounding the decontamination chamber? Between 1939 and 1945, there were around 100 crashes at the base. Dozens of them fatal. But one crash in particular sent shockwaves through Mays Artro.
It was a Wellington bomber crashed over in the mountains somewhere.
On the 6th of April 1942, 6 Czech airmen took off from the base on a routine flight. Just minutes into the voyage, a crew member radioed through complaining of engine trouble. Seconds later, their RAF Wellington bomber smashed into the surrounding hills. All on board died instantly. As the base mourned the death of their comrades, a dilemma arose. Where should they put the bodies?
When the bomber crashed, they laid the crew out in the decontamination centre. It was ideal for laying people out as a makeshift morgue.
And he got a scar down the side of his face.
I wasn't meant to be in the building. It was trying to tell me to get out.
It was very definitely a military person.
The story is that you could see the marks of their arms and legs where they'd bled onto the concrete of the mortuary floor.
In 1988, Pauline El Amrati took a brave step and decided to start her own nursery. The business quickly flourished, but before long Pauline began to think that the community centre in which the nursery was housed wasn't as innocent as it seemed.
It was Monday evening, roughly about 5:30, 5:45. I was in the office by myself with no one else in the building. Banging was like someone was standing the other side, just trying to get out. You can actually see through, and you could actually see there's no one in there. And it frightened the hell out of me. My husband came down here, had a look round, and nothing had been moved. No tables were on the floor, and there was no one in the building.
Over the following weeks, reports of mysterious events increased.
When the children were here, nothing really would happen around the children, except for one occasion in one of the nursery rooms. All the incidents that were happening, and with now this, what we felt was quite a big incident that had happened, we were starting now to sort of get worried. And from there, the police started coming in. It was held down, I know where it was.
With over 30 years' experience as a community police officer, PC Paul Duran had heard many stories.
When Pauline first told me about these experiences she was having with this ghost, I thought, Pauline, come off it. It's poppycock. They don't exist.
I think he was slightly wary of what I was saying. I think he maybe thought I was a little bit mad and making things up.
Dubious but sympathetic, PC Duran decided to organise a charity ghost watch.
And we'll do it for a bit of a laugh, and we'll have get a TV and a video for the kids.
And he brought in paranormal investigator John Spencer, a veteran of over 100 cases. With the building meticulously secured, Paul Duran positioned himself in the upstairs hall, whilst John Spencer ventured down to the basement.
There was a sense of closeness, of the darkness getting just that bit thicker. You were getting a little claustrophobic.
The room I was in was the main canteen area. we heard the training equipment downstairs, the dumbbells lifted and dropped, and I really was frightened at this point.
It was certainly eerie. You actually start to get a bit uncomfortable in your own skin.
Around about 1 o'clock, 1:30, there was a loud ticking noise. The ticking started to move around the room.
You could believe yourself that someone was holding that thing and moving it invisibly. You weren't quite sure what was going to happen next.
The light and lady's lures come on. But, you know, I turned it off and I'd locked that door. I really was frightened. There's no two ways about it. I was frightened.
PC Paul Duran's natural instinct as a police officer meant he wanted answers, and privately he began to research the area around the nursery, leaving Pauline on her own.
Focused on it, but you couldn't see past it. It was just pure black. It was a almost evil feeling, and I felt that it could possibly engulf you. I just knew it was just pure evil.
Pauline's fears provoked her to take drastic action.
We decided to do a Ouija board. We asked a question, is anyone there? It said yes.
Meanwhile, Paul Duran was finding some answers of his own.
So I started flicking through all these newspapers. And then there it was.
We went on to ask it, how did you die? And it said murder.
And this woman had been stabbed to death.
I think we said how, and it went to knife. We then asked it what date did it die, and the date that came through was 18477.
The 18th of April, 1977.
The 18th of April, 1977.
Well, the lady was killed by her husband.
Could it be the nursery corridors were being haunted by the spirit of a woman who was the victim of a local murder? Whatever the answer, the reported activity ceased after the night of the Ouija board. For 10 years, the nursery... But those experiences will never be forgotten.
I can still feel the fear. I can still taste the fear. It still makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I've been involved in fights. I've had guns pulled on me. And I've had people point knives at me. This can't be touched. This is different. This is frightening. I knew I don't want any part of it.
The walkers didn't believe in ghosts. So why did they flee their first home, vowing never to return? For 3 years, childhood sweethearts Patricia and Derek Walker were homeless. Staying with their in-laws, they anxiously waited for Falkirk County Council to provide them with their first home.
By the time they actually gave us the keys to the house, my son was 7 months old, and it was the first house. Lovely area. That's where I grew up, and I was quite happy with the house they'd actually given me.
We basically jumped at the chance to take, get our own house, because it was obviously starting with our own family, and everything was great then.
I just knew it was an eerie feeling, as if someone was watching you. Something was there.
It wasn't long before Patricia Walker's fears increased.
I was standing in the hall, and I was fixing my hair. I was just getting ready to go out. There was a very overpowering smell or smoke or coal.
These things aren't happening. These things can't happen.
As the weeks rolled on, Patricia began to feel more and more frightened that the house held a dark secret. And if so, who would be next?
We would go into the room and check on him, and he'd be fine. It was also shouting things like mum or mummy, and at that time son couldn't speak. I knew that my son were seeing and experiencing things that I had no control over.
Basically, it was actually hard for me to believe it. So that meant I wasn't believing what Patricia was saying. And then that would cause arguments between us.
Patricia was having a hard time convincing her husband that their dream home could be haunted.
The words of, "You're psycho. There's something wrong with you. This house is fine." I was imagining this. I was making things out to be worse than they actually were.
And then it broke us up in a big way.
But was Derek wrong to ignore his wife's pleas?
It was actually one night I was lying in my bed, just fell asleep. Very frightening, very, very frightening. You feel as if you're actually being held down. Can't explain why it happened now. Not believing Patricia and then seeing something like that actually made me feel like an idiot.
I just felt totally devastated. I thought it takes you having something done in front of your face before you actually believe me.
Helpless. I felt helpless about everything that had happened. From that day, she basically got my full support.
Although Derek was now on Patricia's side, their disturbing experiences were taking their toll.
She was actually a nervous wreck.
My mind was going through so many things. someone or something deliberately targeting me and my son. He's looking down at me as if, you know, tell me why are you here, what are you doing here? Although your instincts are get up, get out, I physically couldn't move. The fear had literally frozen me. The actual smoke smell came when it was deliberately targeting me out. Brought me that so low down I didn't know where else to go or what to do.
As Patricia reached breaking point, the council offered the Walkers another house. Their ordeal was over.
I'm not a wealthy person. I don't have a lot of money. And if you offered me $1 million